The New York State Department of Transportation presents the DOT POD.
And welcome into the DOT POD. I'm Josh Heller.
And I'm Anya Cardos.
And we are delighted to have you joining us. Well, we are on the road once again, this time in Rome, New York, as we delve into the innovative world of microtransit. Now, we all know that public transit helps reduce our carbon footprint, and it's also an easy and affordable way for people to get around.
So we are at the Rome Bus Garage for Centro to explore how this region has really harnessed funding to expand ridership, develop new routes, and create a user-friendly app for riders here. We're joined by Ross Farrell. He is NYSDOT's Director of the Public Transportation Bureau, and Centro's Steve Koegel, Vice President of Communications and Business Planning, to talk more about this.
Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
So we'll start out just finding out a little bit more about you both and, about your backgrounds and how you ended up where you are, your path here, and ultimately what it is you do. But Ross, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, I've been with DOT now. I just hit 1 year. But before that, I spent most of my career with the Capital District Transportation Authority, which is essentially Centro, but in the Albany area. Before that, I worked for about a year with the University at Albany. My background is I'm a transportation planner. Went to UAlbany for grad school, where I focused on transportation planning, but also specialized in alternative modes. So that would be biking and walking and public transportation. My experience with CDTA has been was very useful in my current role in realizing how DOT can assist transit entities throughout the state, like Centro, and working with Steve and Steve's staff and other folks within Centro to try to provide the funding that's needed to roll out innovative solutions to public transit, such as microtransit.
Well, congratulations on your 1 year
Well,
milestone.
Thank you.
Steve, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I've been with Centro for 26 years now. Started in our communications department. I have a background in broadcasting, spent 10, 12 years doing radio and television. My father was a bus driver, so when I grew up as a kid, we would sit around the dinner table and I would hear the stories of work. And so when I left broadcasting in the late 90s, this job opportunity opened up. It was a natural fit. Joined it. Now began in communications, doing public relations, but learned the business over the course of my time there. Just kind of moved up in the organization, really learned the route system, took over our service development, which is our route system, about 10 years ago. And I mean, I've been here. I love my job, love working at public transportation, love providing services for the communities that really need the services that we provide. So it's been great. Very rewarding career.
Now, we've mentioned it a couple times already. You're going to hear us mention it much more, but this idea of microtransit, and a lot of people may not be familiar with it. I think before I worked at DOT, I was not familiar with it at all. So let's start out a little bit by helping us understand what microtransit actually is, what it means, and what it does.
It for our purposes at Centro, microtransit is it's smaller vehicles. I think that we get a lot of questions from individuals about, why do you run those big buses around? Well, this is a smaller vehicle, more nimble. It's kind of you would say public transportation meets Uber and Lyft, where it's a little combination of both. You can order these buses and they come on demand. It really you set your schedule rather than you're following the existing schedule. And we're able to provide transportation services to locations and at times of day that perhaps we couldn't before. So it's more convenient to the users. It's very attractive, especially in communities where you find that they have very limited taxi services, and the taxis in those companies are much more expensive than the public transportation version of it. It's been a success here in Centro, but Ross, you can talk a little bit more about maybe on a global perspective of what you see for microtransit.
It's exactly what you were just saying, this sort of halfway point between conventional fixed route transit that most people understand and Uber and Lyft. So it allows a transit provider to have more customer focused or sort of customer centric service where they're not tied to a specific schedule or a specific corridor, but they can get on an app, say, I need a bus. I'm at point A. I need to get to point C, and be able to give that trip. as we were talking about on the ride out, conventional bus service, the issue with that is the fact that if you're going from point A to point C, you're probably going to have to get on another bus that brings you to point B and then transfer to get over. So it's really that direct connection that microtransit can provide. And it's a great alternative where fixed route just isn't working, or fixed route isn't working. And I think Rome is a great example of this, right? Where you wanted to upgrade the service here, but you knew by just giving more fixed route, that wasn't the solution. And so microtransits come in, and as Steve has already told us, earlier today, it's more productive, it's providing more ridership, and it's a great solution for Rome, New York. Where it works and where it doesn't is the key part of defining what type of microtransit you have, or if even microtransit is the alternative. For instance, you're not going to see microtransit in Midtown Manhattan. You're just not. That's where obviously conventional transit is going to work. But in smaller communities, in rural communities, or in suburban communities outside of a major city, that's where you're seeing microtransit being rolled out and being successful. And the pilot that we have, which is what we're going to get into, is really for DOT to start to see the different forms of microtransits, the different ways it's going to be rolled out, and where it works best and where it may not. And so that we know and are informed in the future of what we want to fund to expand.
Steve, you know the area well. You even said that your father was a bus driver too. Back in March, Centro really got a big boost. Commissioner Dominguez of NYSDOT was out here. She was celebrating $1 million in funding under Governor Hochul's mobility initiative, which really represented the largest upgrade to Centro's public transit system in decades.
Yeah, here in Rome, we took over Rome in 2005 and pretty much just left it alone. But it became apparent to us in the late like 2018, 2019, that we would have to take a look at our system because public transportation ridership was starting to trend down a little bit, and some of these routes became a little to the point where we didn't know if we were going to be able to support it much longer. Then COVID hit, and then everything was put on halt for COVID because COVID stopped everything. But as we came out of COVID, we took a look at how we can reshape our Rome system and make it more useful for the users, number one, more efficient from our perspective, and more convenient for the riders. So we looked at consolidating and taking away some of those non-productive bus routes and replacing them with microtransit. And by doing so, we gave more options to more people because that zone we created didn't just cover the area where that used to have bus routes, but it covered a much larger area of the population. So now we really serve the entire city of Rome. And at the same time, we were able to take those buses that were running up and down those non-productive routes, put them on the productive routes, and then we're able to increase the frequency on those routes from every 45 minutes to every half hour. Total game changer. So now we have more productive fixed routes. We've seen the ridership on our fixed routes, on the 3 existing fixed routes, exceed the 6 previous routes we had a year ago. And on top of that, we're providing about 200 to 225 rides per week on our microtransit. Many of these users had never used public transportation before.
Wow.
So we've increased the number of people who are using it, expanded our footprint, became more efficient, and now overall, ridership's a funny thing. I'll say our ridership is up 3%. Doesn't sound like a lot. But as Ross talked about earlier, we're now providing more direct service. So an individual who used to ride in the northern part of Rome to get to the western part of Rome where Walmart is, used to have to take 2 buses. They took a bus downtown, transferred, and got to Walmart. Now that same user calls on it's called Move, our microtransit is called Move, calls a Move vehicle. It picks them up at a point near where they live and drops them off at Walmart. That's one ride. So we cut our ridership in half, so to speak, but we have happy transit users in Rome. Our app, we get reviews. We have 256 reviews. 241 of them are 5-star ratings. So.
And this is an app basically kind of like Uber or Lyft, where you can just go right on and say, I'm here. I'm going to walk like 10 steps out. and I get picked up. Is that
That's
how
basically
it
the
works?
system. Yep. And if you don't have access to a smartphone, there's a phone number you can call, and you can call in and you can order your ride that way. Right now, I think our breakdown is, I think about 70% of the users use the app, and about 30% of our users. Rome is a little older, skews a little older demographic, so there's not as many smartphone users. So we do have a lot of people who call up and book a ride via the phone.
I want to talk about the pilot, Ross. Maybe you can go into that a little bit more. You know, we're still learning. This is still in its infancy here in Rome and everywhere else, frankly.
Yep.
And so this is kind of an opportunity to kind of hone this a little bit, kind of see what works and what doesn't. And we talked a little bit earlier, finding out what doesn't work is just as important as finding out what does work. And so talk a little bit about these pilots that are taking place and what we're hoping to get out of them.
So this is part of a larger program that DOT is leading called the Innovative Mobility Initiative. There are federal funds involved in that through the carbon reduction program, but the main, really the core, the beginning of the funding came from the state of New York. And initial use of that money has been to fund pilots across the state in the upstate transit authority, so CDTA, Centro, RGRTA, which is in Rochester, NFTA in Buffalo, but also downstate in Westchester, Suffolk, and Nassau County. So each one of those entities is receiving $1 million. They've given us project proposals. Some are running now, obviously, like Centro. CDTA's is running. That's between their train station in Albany and downtown Albany. But a number of different pilots are happening by those transit authorities. So they're each getting $1 million, and that $1 million can go to the operations, so paying for the drivers. It can go towards the technology, which is really obviously the key piece of microtransit. So that's the app development. It can go to the vehicles themselves. And then we're going to have actually out on the street now is a competitive solicitation for roughly $8 million that combines some of the state funds and the federal funds, so other entities outside of those sevens can compete to have microtransit for themselves. And we're hoping to get solicitations back in the end of September. We might move that to end of October, but that's just going to be another set of probably 3 or 4 more pilots that will exist in the state.
Let's talk about public feedback, Steve. What have you heard from the public as far as how this has benefited them? And I'm talking about a wide range of generations. What's been the word on the street here about the work you guys have done?
So I think initially when we first rolled out the concept, I think there was a lot of skepticism, not just among the public, but I think some within the organization, whether it was going to work or not. I think what we've seen is that it's a success. Our ridership is very happy. I talked about the reviews we receive. Everybody who uses it loves it. We are able to get people to locations they couldn't get to before, or get to people we couldn't get to before because they couldn't walk as far as they needed to get to the bus stop. So it's been fantastic. We have, we talk about the generational who uses it. We have one gentleman who uses it almost every day to visit his wife who's in a nursing facility. So he's on our bus. Everyone knows him. It's George. He loves us. Without us, he wouldn't be able to get to see his wife every day.
Wow.
We have other individuals who work for the school district. We pick them up about 6:30 in the morning. They're there every day. They get to where they need to go, to a location that we really didn't serve before or didn't serve well. So they were new to the system. So there's just a good range of individuals who are using the service, whether it's for personal reasons, shopping. Walmart is the number one bus stop just about in every transit system in America. So we can get individuals who now can make more than one trip during the day, or be able to stay longer or have a shorter trip to Walmart, because the fixed route before they had to get there, maybe they had to wait an extra hour. They didn't need to wait. So now people are finding that the service is just more convenient. And George, who I talked about, the 90-year-old gentleman, uses the app. He does not call. He uses the app. So when we hear, we can't use the app, I say, I'm going to give you George's phone number. He's going to walk you through this. And if he can figure it out, you can figure it out.
You mentioned, when the rollout was starting, there were obviously questions, maybe some concerns. Talk a minute about how you were able to educate the public on this, because this is different. This is something that people aren't used to, and I feel like education had to be so important for people to buy into the fact that this could work.
Yeah, we did I think, not to pat ourselves on the back too much,
God,
but I
that's
think
what we're here for.
I think we did a really nice job of preparing the community for what was coming. We met with stakeholders, we met with the city leadership, we met with a lot of the senior facilities, we met with the colleges beforehand to say, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing. Any feedback, let us know what you think. And then we spent a couple of weeks at our transit hub where we were able to canvass and speak to, luckily the weather was great, outdoors, have good conversations with our riders. Our drivers stopped by to kind of educate them. So well in advance of the rollout, and this was 4 to 6 months ahead of when we were going to implement it, we were able to educate them on what to expect. We had a public hearing, which was not well attended because I think we had done such a good job with the outreach. And we went through this and we kicked it off. And I think there was some skepticism, but we quickly got our ridership up to really significant levels. I think because people knew not just that it was coming, but how to use it. We did demonstrations. We continue to meet we have a fantastic travel training program here in Rome. We have a gentleman, he's Z. Z goes out and he travel trains. If you have questions, he brings the bus. He shows you how to use the fixed route system. He'll also bring the app and show you how to use the app. So he's constantly going to some of the English as a second language communities that we have here. Also the senior centers. So we have a very robust travel training program. I think that's helped a lot. Just getting that connection with the community so they knew what to expect and they weren't surprised. And I think some people in the beginning were like, oh no, you're taking my bus away. You're taking my bus away because we replaced fixed route buses. But now they realize how easy it is to use the app or make a phone call to get this vehicle. And we have a 92% fulfillment rate. So 92% of the calls that come in, somebody gets a ride and they use the ride. And that doesn't discount the number of individuals who will say, oh, you gave me a ride. Now my plans have changed. And that's part of the 8%. So it's been we've been very lucky. I think we did some good planning. We're also very lucky where we've rolled it out. It's been very successful.
Now, just staying on education for a moment, because you mentioned this also, which made me think about it, educating the drivers. And these are drivers that have probably been driving the same routes for many, many years. I mean, like you said, your father was a driver. This is different. How was it in educating them on A, what they're going to be doing, and B, buying in to what they're doing?
Again, skepticism initial.
Sure.
Boy, I don't know if this is going to work. We were just having a conversation 15 minutes ago with the driver and our dispatcher, and they were both saying, yeah, it's worked a lot better than we thought.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, so, but they love it. So what we have discovered is that the drivers prefer this work over regular line service. I think it's more one-on-one communication with the customer. You get to know your customers every day. You build a better bond. You're not dealing with a larger vehicle that you have to drive. And this is really important when you think about, from a global perspective. There's a driver shortage all across the nation of CDL drivers. So if I can provide a better work environment to showcase for a potential driver, I now have a better chance of getting that individual in the door. So microtransit is going to help us attract bus operators in the future because it's just a different vibe for the operator. It's not a 40-foot bus through traffic, tight turns with a lot of people on the vehicle. It's a different environment for the worker. It's a better environment for most of our bus operators. And I can guarantee you that this first time we have what's called sign-ups where drivers sign up on their work, everyone avoided the microtransit. The next time around, it's going to be the number one pick.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to hear that part of it too. And I also love the public engagement, actually bringing a bus out there and showing people how to use it. My next question, though, is posed to both of you, Ross and Steve. This is a pilot program. Obviously, as Josh alluded to, this is a learning experience as well. So both of you, what are you learning from this pilot program? And Ross, I'll go to you first.
Well, I think the first thing is, even listening to Steve talk, is the fact that how you define what success is a part of what's going to happen with this pilot program. So what Steve just said with a 92% fulfillment rate, that's incredible, right? And what's going to be important for DOT to do is, as we see these pilots roll out, is look at the fulfillment rates throughout the state and start developing some metrics as to what success actually is. The other thing Steve just brought up is the 3% increase in ridership, which again goes back to the fact that now you're not double counting people who were before having to transfer. But even 3% shows that your public outreach was a great success, because a lot of the times what happens with new transit services, you've got to wait. Sometimes it's up to a year, maybe even 2 years before you can take a look and actually see the results. So I imagine even that 3% is going to grow over time. So I think it really comes down to us learning from DOT's end is how successful these are and what is the way we define success dependent on the location, right? Rome, New York is going to be very unique in comparison to maybe a rural county in the southern tier.
And what, Steve, have you learned through this pilot program from other transit authorities? What have you learned from them, their takeaways, and how has that helped?
So we were very happy not to be on the bleeding edge of this technology. We learned a lot of lessons from I'm not going to name individual properties, but there are other properties that we've met with and said, okay, don't do this. Think about how you design your zones. I do want to go back to what Ross said, though. Defining microtransit by ridership is going to be dangerous. Mm-hmm. We need to make sure that we understand that we're going to see a decrease in ridership where we're replacing fixed route with microtransit, because it's going to be about the customer experience. But we learned a lot from our other transit agencies about how to shape a zone, because you don't want to have it too long where you're losing you're having a lot of empty miles where the bus has to travel a long period without potential pickups. We learned just a little bit about the branding of it, a little bit how to brand it, how to really market it and get into the communities, and just kind of place microtransit in a location that made sense. We kind of got lucky with Rome. We kind of knew this would be a good location for it. And as Ross said, we didn't want to replace busy bus routes and use this as a way to make changes in the system. This was truly about finding places where there was a need for transit, but the transit need did not warrant a big 40-foot bus with 60 seats.
I think it's interesting, and it has to be a little bit difficult, because one of the questions that when I was thinking about this episode was asking about how you've used, as Anya said, other authorities or even other states who put this in, and how, since Rome at the moment is showing success here, how you could use Rome as this model of success moving forward. That's difficult to do because every place is so unique. It has to be a little frustrating. You have this success story right now, but it's going to be difficult to say this is the blueprint for doing this in the future and in different places. It's a kind of a tightrope to walk.
But it's actually a good thing, right? Because the way I'm looking at this is, okay, you have a smaller municipality that has a level of density to it, but not the high level of population that can support fixed route. There's more of these types of communities, I'm sure, in central New York. There's more of these types of communities, throughout New York State. So this is what DOT was thinking, right? With where microtransit would be successful. Again, it's the communities that have some level of density. They're on the border, the bubble, if you will. They don't have that very high level of density and potential ridership where fixed route would work. But they are communities that do need to have public transit. And so now if we're using this type of service and matching it with this type of area and it's working out, then let's do this more throughout other parts of the state. And
I'll add, if you Ross, I know you're going to know what I'm talking about with regarding to planning. So when you're talking about communities planning what they're going to look like, we have, in the past 20 years, we've made every community their own little city where they have everything they need within a 2 to 3 mile radius. You would think you've got your grocery store, you've got your medical facilities and everything. So microtransit, therefore, would be ideal for those types of communities if they're separated in like a suburban location where you say, okay, you're going to get 2 buses going to drive around town all day long, and you don't need to go, like in Syracuse, you don't need to go downtown. Because you don't need to go downtown because everything you have is locally. So now I used to have a fixed route bus that would go from your community to downtown because why? Suburban workers needed to get to the city to get to their job. That's not the case anymore. It's more suburb to suburb. And if you're not going to work, all your trips are local. You don't need to go downtown to the grocery store, to the hospital, or wherever. You have everything you need in your little community. So as our communities are designed in more of clusters, you look at microtransit saying, we're going to serve that cluster with microtransit.
Ross, Steve, whenever we have time, we like to ask our guests 2 questions. What is your favorite DOT road trip? And what is your favorite road tripping music? And go.
Wow.
So yeah, I guess my favorite trips will always be one, yes, by taking Amtrak. Actually, let's start with that. So any upstate trip, and I was telling you guys this, I'm a transit dork. I'm a rail dork in particular. So yeah, I will put that as any upstate, Albany to Syracuse, Rochester, or Buffalo. Love taking the train. If it's by car, it's anything going up into the Thousand Islands. That's probably the most picturesque, best place in New York, to whether it's to vacation or just see the area.
All right, what are you jamming out to?
Here's the question: is a significant other with me in the car? If it's in Thousand Islands, if it's in Thousand Islands, this is. Let me. Because I'm not going to say Slayer. And
why not?
You just did.
I'm not
You just did. You said it.
Well, it was
out.
ironic because we started the trip today with Anya saying, "All right, so we put on Slayer," and I stopped and I was like, "Oh, really? Like this would be amazing."
These are my people.
These are my people. And then I was like, "Oh, she was just joking." Any type of metal would be what I listen to while I'm in the car by myself, trying to get from point A to point B and not speeding too fast.
Love it, Steve.
Wow. I will say I'm also a transit geek. Every time my wife and I go out of town, I have to try the transit system, and it makes her crazy.
And isn't that the?
Wow.
Do you do the?
You guys are
we gotta
transit
follow. We
geeks.
gotta follow the bus. And
No,
it's
no.
like,
We're going to use the bus to get to where we're going. And it makes her insane.
That's
It's all right. That's
That's
okay. Or the train or wherever it is. I got to use public
You guys
transportation.
are true transit geeks.
Yeah, it's really weird.
and it drives.
It drives so
I
crazy.
and Steve and I have never talked about this. This
Yeah.
is the significant other. It drives her crazy because I'm like, well, we need a half a day to get on the bus and ride the bus, and it's like we don't have a half a day. I'm like, well, why are we here? It's like not to ride the bus. Anyway, sorry. Go
Sorry.
ahead.
Boy, where do I want
I don't
to
know
go
what you
in
cut
New York
out there.
State? I lived in the Catskills for a bit, but I love the Adirondacks. So I would say probably something through the Adirondacks in the middle of nowhere, just driving through. And I'm definitely a grunge guy. I would be listening to Green Day or Stone Temple Pilots or something like that. That would be that's my jam.
I got 3 90s grunge guys and hard rockers in this room, but I like it.
Well, guys, we really appreciate you taking some time to chat with us, and we look forward to seeing where this goes, and certainly we will be following up with you guys to get some updates on this. So thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
A lot of fun.
Thanks.
Well, that'll just about do it for us here from the DOTPOD. Anya, very interesting one today.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. When you see a bus go by or you take a bus, you don't really understand what goes behind that ride, what's involved. And I got a lot out of today's episode. This was really cool. Ride a bus, everybody.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you to our guests today, Ross Farrell and Steve Koegel. And thanks to you for listening in wherever you may be doing so and however you may be doing so. We always appreciate you tuning in to the DOTPOD. You can reach on out to us, podcast at dot.ny.gov. That's the easiest way to do it. Podcast at dot.ny.gov. So for Anya, I'm Josh here from Rome, New York. Until next time, we're right here on DOTPOD.